Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm joined by Elijah Siegler. Elijah, nice to meet you again now on the podcast.
Nice to meet you too.
So we had a nice chat offline last week. I spoke for about 40 minutes or so, and yeah, doing it recorded now. I think for those listening, Elijah is an artist. I'm really excited to get you into the public a little bit because I think you have really nice things to say. And yeah, I'm a big fan of your music. I found it originally through I was making a short on YouTube and I love Minari, the soundtrack, which we spoke about as well.
Mm.
And you made a cinematic cover of I think it was Jacob and the Stone that I chose to use. I think
Yeah.
that's your a
Hmm.
very popular one on your channel.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and I love that one. Used it many times since. Been
Thank
listening
you.
to
Appreciate it.
music and yeah, I've had this urge to speak to more artists. I spoke to another one yesterday, Matt Hylam. I really enjoyed that talk as well. He makes different types of music. It's like the best way to describe it, something like Billie Eilish type of style, so multi-genre.
Okay.
So he's a producer,
Yeah.
but he sings on it, he raps it.
Oh, okay.
And so I think it's a nice contrast with you. And yeah, why don't you tell the people listening a bit about yourself and then about the music you make and why you make it?
Yeah. So about me, I started out as a pianist, and so if you want to know about my musical journey, the
Mm,
piano is sort of integral centerpiece of how I express myself and how I get ideas down. And I'm from Massachusetts, and that's important because growing up by the ocean, it was very influential,
mm,
sonically speaking, like just the way water moves. And growing up, as I developed my taste, I just realized how appealing the concept of ebb and flow is in sound. And so I incorporate that and in my music, and I gravitate towards that while listening to music. And so that's a huge part of like my sound identity, I guess, and what I
yeah.
like to go for. And yeah, I right now I'm currently pursuing film composition independently and running a YouTube channel and just recording, producing, mixing, and composing music in my home studio. And yeah, I mean,
That's
that's the
awesome.
life.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
you made a song. I think it was related to the ocean. I'm not sure what the title was. Um, can you help me out with that?
Yeah, it might have been The Ocean Beneath Your Skin,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
have multiple water-esque
Yeah.
cinematic pieces and more that have yet to be released, but yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So I told you I love
Yeah.
that one. Is it an original that you made or is it like a cover or what is the
Yeah, it's an original.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. It's really, really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Thank
told
you.
you I told you last week that I love listening to cinematic music for I don't know what reason exactly.
Right.
Um, and we discussed this a bit already, but I think it's worth talking about again. Like what drives you to make this type of music as opposed to, something that Matt does that I spoke to yesterday. I mean, there's
Right.
endless things to pick from, and then you end up here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when you're working on a film per se, you are sort of serving the story and the director and their needs. And that's sort of a different thing. But yeah, it is true. Like I do gravitate towards just making this genre of music
Yeah,
completely separate from working on a film.
yeah.
And I think the reason why that is because, well, I mean, a lot of film music is very meditative
Mm,
and thematically broad. And so it kind of captures all of life in a thematic sense, uh, but also in a sense where you're able to meditate on it. And um, like we talked about this before, like words in music, lyrics are amazing. Words in music can take you places, like incredible places,
mm,
emotionally speaking, and add layers of depth that wouldn't be there already, obviously. But when it comes to instrumental music or music that is just pure, music, it sort of enhances the nuance, the subtlety, and I think film music, cinematic music is a sort of an alchemy of the nuance that classical music, the classical tradition has brought into music, and the meditative minimalism that electronic music has
Ah,
established. And it sort of combines the two and combines technological sonic advance with um, like the classical minimalism tradition.
that's super
Like
cool.
yeah, I really love it. And of course, not all film music is minimalistic. Like some
Hmm.
of it can be very complex musically speaking. But yeah, it's just a very appealing aesthetic and genre to explore sound. And in terms of sound, like it, if anything I've learned from Hans Zimmer is that it's kind of limitless. Like you can,
Yeah.
and he's still doing this well into
Yeah.
his old age. Like proving that there is no limit to what kind of sounds you can combine and um, create. So it's a
Yeah.
really exciting space to be in. So
Yeah, I can
like,
imagine. Yeah, I told you last week this is like what I would love to be able to do because it's the music that
right,
I connect
yeah,
with most. Um,
right, yeah.
do you have a favorite movie soundtrack?
Favorite, oh, that's a interesting question because my answer isn't um typical, but I'd say for a traditional film score, I would have to choose The Village by James Newton Howard.
I don't know it.
Um, yeah, I recommend you listen to it.
Cool.
It's performed with Hilary Hahn, who's a famous professional world-class violinist. Um, and it's solo violin, so it's just, but it's mixed in a different way than classical music. There's a bit more ambience to the mix, and it's it's just so beautiful and poetic the way everything is written. It yeah, it's been my favorite score for almost a decade, probably. Like it's that great. And then, but I would say my favorite like film score, it's not really a film score, but if you ever seen The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick,
Yeah,
which
we
I
spoke
know,
about
yeah,
this.
you
Yeah.
saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The he uses classical music, um, like and just picks apart these different classical mu pieces and puts them in his film. But I'd say that selection of music for The Tree of Life is my favorite selection or score, you want to call it, that I've ever like seen and heard. And so I say that's my favorite
Yeah.
film score, but it's not really like by one composer, it's by a bunch of different ones. So yeah.
That's cool. Do you listen to a lot of film scores even that you didn't see, like that you didn't watch the movies? Do you ever do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I there would be music that I'd be listening to for well over like a year, not even seen the movie,
Yeah, yeah.
just because I didn't remember to or whatnot. But
Is it
yeah,
like is it then different watching the movie when you've already you've
hmm,
integrated a lot of the
trying to think.
music.
Yeah, it can be. I remember Jacob and the Stone. Yeah, I heard it. I heard it and was listening to it before I saw Minari. Um, yeah, it was different. It wasn't everything I expected it to be,
Mm.
but but yeah, it kind of it does expand your imagination of the music. I know for some people it might ruin it because they imagine something
Yeah,
totally
exactly.
different. But yeah,
Cool. I
yeah,
wanted to speak about how your worldview intertwines with your music. You mentioned that you couldn't separate the two in a sense,
right.
if I remember that correctly. Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, that's very important. And I have yet to showcase my worldview in very explicit examples. It's been alluded to.
Hmm.
Um, but but yeah, the worldview I carry, it's centered around Christianity, Christendom, in a sense where the purpose of humanity, the origins of beauty itself in art, anything that's good, anything that's beautiful, derives and originates from God and God's nature.
Mm.
And so that having that sort of frame of mind when I sit down and write a piece of music, knowing that I'm not the original creator of what I'm even doing, it's pointing to a larger life than me, something
Mm.
much greater than I. And so when I sit down and write, I don't have the mindset of I am the creator. I'm just a a smaller version of the creator.
Yeah.
And that coming from the biblical theology of man being created in God's image and likeness, and that we can create in a similar sense that in the way God has created the world and the flowers and has painted the sky, the clouds, and set everything in motion. Basically, we can do the same. And so when I write, yeah, the I can't divorce the worldview, the way I see beauty, the way I see suffering, like the way I see the value of human life from my art, because a lot of the times that's what my art is written about and written for,
Mm.
even if it doesn't have words, which I do write lyrics sometimes, but for the most part right now I'm writing purely instrumental, but yeah, even that, it's once you discover like um my worldview as an artist and then listen to my music, you'll maybe see a fuller picture of what like I'm expressing
Yeah.
overall. Um, but yeah, like whether I'm expressing the beauty of the earth, of a friend I have, or relationship, um, or my own suffering or the suffering of others,
Mhm.
it's I sort of do like naturally frame it all in this like Christocentric way where it has purpose and it's not just lying about. It's not just, just a another track of music in the noise of
Yeah.
YouTube or the internet. But it's my own personal expression. Now, people may not like my music, and that's fine. Like sometimes I don't like my music a lot, but it, I think it stands that, yeah, it's just something personal I share with God. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's impossible to if we're gonna have a conversation about art and music and in specific my art and music and what I want to put out into the world throughout my
Mhm.
life, you can't avoid I can't avoid talking about Christ
Yeah.
and my background religiously and philosophically. So yeah.
I think it's beautiful because I think it adds aim, it adds intention, it adds purpose
Right.
to the work. And more importantly, I think it allows you to do this in a humble manner. And I think people that create things, the danger of people that are good at creating things or even inventing things, whether it be music or machines, is the idea that it's yours. Like it's a very
Hmm.
modern thing also to have our names on all of our paintings and
Hmm.
it's like I think in a more ancient world that was, let's say, more explicitly
Hmm.
religious, like it was just more of a normal thing, it would be kind of a taboo to even put your name there because it's so
Right.
obvious that
Okay.
you're
Yeah.
you're you're working for God, and that's in no way it's like a is that a denigrating thing. I think it's like the highest honor.
Right.
So it's a way to lift you up and to also keep you humble. Um,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I that is an interesting point. I am sort of from a philosophical perspective returning to something, a practice that's very ancient
yeah,
and it's not very modern.
yeah.
Um, because the modern way, I'd say. if I were to estimate, um, since the Enlightenment and when music became more individualistic and
Hmm.
separated from the church more and more around, I'd say the 18th century or something, when the era of classical music was forming
Yeah.
away from the Baroque style in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like more about the people, more about the culture, the and that's great. Like, we want to celebrate our artists. We want to be celebrate our culture, our nationalities and whatnot. But if it's all about humanity and about our sort of lifting ourselves up, then that just always it felt to me that it falls flat
Yeah.
and it doesn't lead me anywhere to where, what I've observed about reality, about creation.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I can go on and on about this, but yeah, that's an interesting point because it is an ancient tradition to view one's life, one's art, one's things that people you produce to be a part of a larger
Yeah.
purpose under God, not just before society or
Yeah.
your
It's
culture.
like
Yeah.
it's a gift, like you're given something and
Hmm.
you take that upon you because like you have the talents to make music, so you make music. And that's
Right.
yeah, I think that's a very sane and wise way to deal with that.
Hmm.
I don't know. Do you think every person has like a vocation that they're supposed to be doing, or how do you think
Ooh,
that
that's a
works?
tough,
Because that's something that
complex
I didn't
question.
think before. Like when I was a
Yeah.
kid, I would be like, okay, what do I want to become? And it's like
Hmm.
it was all about me. Like, what do I will to be? Um,
Right.
and then as I've grown older, I've been like praying about it, being like, what am I supposed to do? What
Right.
is the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a bit of a tension
Yeah,
between that.
I do think about that. I think it's easy to become so caught up in this honestly Eastern idea of destiny and
Mm.
this Far Eastern idea of destiny and um sort of being a type of person where you only get to be that type of person and
Yeah.
that's what you need to be. But see, I think God does will things, and there are purposes, obviously, individually for people.
Mm.
I mean, we've seen that all throughout history, um, documented. But it's like I was introduced to the piano. I did have an inclination towards music and hearing it. I could hear a piece and then figure it out on the piano. And that was like one of the big indicators that I was supposed to do music. But man, all the things I know how to do now, that wasn't really talent. Like
Mm.
I had to really work at it. And like,
Mm.
I think according to how you grew up, according to your psychology, the way you work, I think there's fields for you that you could choose from. Now, like a kid in South Africa who grew up not even seeing a piano before being a teenager or whatever, like, is he going to become a concert pianist?
Yeah.
Like there are limited things, I'm not going to be like a Japanese taiko drummer.
Yeah.
And like, because I didn't grow up in Japan, I didn't grow up around that community. So I think I do think of it a little bit more loosely because I think and believe that you can live a purposeful life in so many different ways. And yeah, for me, like it was apparent that I needed to do music,
Yeah.
but also the great struggle of my journey has been like, how do I do it? Because if you look back on like my profiles, like I've written quite a bit of lo-fi music, produced a lot of hip hop music. I've produced like an indie ambient experimental record of like 24 songs or 20 songs. Like I was trying to explore like what am I what am I where am I supposed to go? Like
Yeah.
I've fallen on film music as sort of like a default, but I'm also branching off into writing my own classical music. I don't know
Wow.
where that's going, but it's yeah, so I'm a little bit more loose with it because I know and I've been shown that and I've seen in people's lives and listening to people's stories that you can live a purposeful life, God-given purposeful life in many different ways.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be like this destiny thing where I'm destined to be a podcaster or a teacher or work with people like you.
Yeah.
That's just something that you've seen and that you can pursue and you've
Yeah.
pursued it and you're doing it purposefully, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think anyone can do music, right? Like
Yes. But it's a question
technically,
of is
yeah,
that like your natural inclination or not?
right, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know people who are not naturally inclined. Would I recommend they and they're inclined in other areas? I
Mm.
wouldn't recommend they fully pursue music, even though if they really tried, they probably could develop the mental tools to like have a sense of rhythm and harmony
Yeah.
and just jot down their ideas. I think anyone can do that. Like we're all people. We can all learn and adapt and um but yeah, inclination and like what you're drawn to is really important.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yes.
mine is just music though. Yeah.
Was that you said it was apparent to you? Was that apparent to you from a very young age, or when did that manifest
Mhm.
itself for you?
Yeah. I think around the age of 9,
Oh,
um, before 9 years old, I had very like shallow interactions with music where I grew up in a Christian home, so there was a lot of like Christian artist music, like CCM music.
yeah,
It was it wasn't all that inspiring to me. Like it was nice. I liked it as a kid. And I listened to it and I like Toby Mac. I like, the Freaking and Country. If you know these guys, but I liked them, but
yeah,
I wasn't when I listened to Hans Zimmer, I didn't just like
yeah,
Hans
yeah,
Zimmer when I
yeah.
found him.
A different thing.
I I played the one song which I told you about before.
Yeah,
I watched Man of Steel, the Zack Snyder Man of Steel, and I noticed the music in the background for the scene where um Superman as a baby was being launched up. But before that, his father was fighting Zod, and the soundtrack behind it was so incredible. I just had to have it. So I got an MP3 player for Christmas, got the song off of iTunes, and then just replayed that one cue over and over and over again. And that's really, I think that's like the moment where I was like, okay, this is much more than just I like to do this. Like
yeah,
it it really was like kind of transcendent
yeah,
just because of how beautiful the music was and how epic it was and yeah.
yeah. That resonates for me. I feel like I don't know, watching movies from a young age, it can be so I don't know, like overwhelming. And for me, the
Right.
music was just it was supposed to be there. Like sometimes when you see things like it just fits there's music and it's like okay this makes this event, whether it be a movie scene or even something in real life, it makes it like more itself. It makes it
Right.
more real when you find the appropriate music, and it makes me think that there is appropriate music to different things.
Right.
And that like that perspective I like a lot because it turns the artist into like a someone that discovers,
Hmm.
like you're figuring out what fits there. And yeah, like I mean for me Interstellar was very was a big influence on me in the way
Yeah.
that I see the world. At first it terrified me, the movie, because like that's the relationship
Mm,
with God or with awe like that you can have. It's like it can terrify you at first, but
mm,
that's what things do that are beautiful, like
mm.
incredible
Yeah.
things. Um, and then you can learn to love something like that and to actually be present with it instead of just
Hmm.
having that response of like wow. And I don't know any for me there's limited instances in which that happens to me of like
Hmm.
this feeling of deep awe, and it happens a lot with these types of movie scores, like these soundtracks, these the instruments that are used. It's just, and I like to
Yeah.
listen to them just in daily life. um
Right.
and sometimes I feel like they capture the drama, they capture the,
Right.
I don't know, this thing that you spoke about in the video about Minari and the song and why it makes people cry.
Mm.
And you spoke about, I think it was a balance between beauty and sadness of life, something like that, or the meaning and the sadness. Am I getting that correct?
Um, I th yeah, I think around those lines. Let's see if I remember.
It's like tragedy. It's
Um,
like life is tragic, but it's beautiful. And like,
right. Yeah,
uh,
it is. It is. Yeah, my thoughts on that is that it was like there was something inherently sad about the music,
yeah,
but it was so beautifully framed, like the melody,
yeah,
the sound, and it all culminated into this line of in between extreme beauty and extreme tragedy.
yeah,
And that's why people were reacting so strongly
yeah,
and among other reasons, but
yeah. I
yeah.
love this idea that it like mimicked the sound of crying.
Yeah,
These, it's so
I made
cool.
sure to credit
Yeah,
who's a YouTuber. I
it's in
forgot
the
his
video.
name.
It's in the
Yeah,
video.
it's in the video because it wasn't my
Yeah, yeah.
observation originally. I think I just intuitively knew it,
Mhm.
but yeah, I then I took it a step further in the video and I combined the soundtrack with a clip of
Yeah,
somebody crying.
yeah.
And that's when I
Wow.
knew I was like, oh my word.
Yeah,
Like sounds these sounds like inherently evoke something. Like if you hear like loud drums thumping and it's trying to evoke a sense of anger, and it's like, what
mm,
does your heart do? It like speeds up.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
faster tempos evoke chase sequences in films. Um, Slower, more ethereal. In this case, when you have a high melody going up and then down and it's descending, that's kind of how crying works. It starts and then it goes lower
Mm,
and then it usually resets. And that's
yeah,
what the melody of Jacob and the Stone does. And I don't know if Emil was intentionally making it do that. I don't think I probably I bet he was just experimenting and just writing a beautiful melody like he does, but that's the effect and it was
yeah.
just insane.
But I think that aligns, the fact that it aligns with crying, it makes sense. Like
Right.
it's a natural thing of like this
Hmm.
idea of making the appropriate music. Like if the movie evokes these types of feelings, and it makes sense that the music evokes crying and the music even sounds like
Hmm.
crying. That's all these things coming together at the same time
Hmm.
of, I don't know, when I hear that music, what I think is, especially when I'm having hard times in life, of like this is like life is tragic in so many ways, and you can get thrown the worst cards and still find purpose, like always, always. And that's
Hmm.
that worldview that you were talking about as well. Like no matter what happens, it's still love that's at the foundation there. And that's such a powerful idea that it can get you through any hardship, any storm. And I
Hmm.
think that's like, for me, it's part of the reason why the music means so much to me. It's existential. Like
Right.
it captures for me that That's so beautifully. So thank you for
Yeah.
making that song even more
Oh,
beautiful.
oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. Um, Existential was a good word you used. Yeah, film music just in general feels very existential for the most part. I mean, I've heard some good Transformers cues, but like I wouldn't say all of Transformers is
No,
like I don't even think Steve Jablonsky, the composer, would admit that either.
no, no, no.
But generally speaking, it's like when we look at Oppenheimer from Ludwig Göransson or Inception from Hans Zimmer or uh like the Joker soundtrack from Hildur Gudnadottir or wherever whatever film soundtrack that really has showcases a lot of depth. Yeah, it's very existential
Yeah,
and it really cuts to the point of honestly how people feel
yeah.
really. And yeah, I touched on it lightly on my video essay, but the concept of minimalism is so influential throughout all of modern music. Started noticing and studying that like when you repeat a progression of chords,
Hmm.
it gets you in a meditative state of repetition. And of course, there's variation with that repetition. Like in pop music, you have the verse, the chorus, verse two, chorus, bridge, and chorus or whatever.
Yeah,
And there's variation in the repetition. Um, but when it repeats, it does sort of evoke a meditative response of I'm focusing on one emotion here. And I hear that with metal music even when they have rhythms and sounds blasting at high frequency
yeah,
volumes and and whatnot, it does get people in a state of sort of accelerated adrenaline,
yeah, yeah.
even anger. And I see this with ambient and lo-fi music
Mm.
where people studying, doing their homework, the lo-fi music, it might have like 3 to 5 chords in it, but the beat is steady and it's mellow and it's meditative and ambient and it gets people, their brain,
Yeah,
in a focused state. And I know that like non-minimalistic music, say, if you listen to John Williams or something, I wouldn't
yeah,
say he's not a minimalist at all,
yeah,
but there are like non-minimalist genres that can get you in a meditative state, but um like I would say a really great example is polyphonic music during the Renaissance or pre-Baroque period music where
mm.
you had like Gregorian chant,
Yeah,
like stuff like that. Um but yeah, the concept of and power of minimalism is so powerful and I use it
yeah. It's
most
super.
of the time.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's a very powerful technique and tool.
I love that. That's like a thing of. It's this very simple way of making music in some sense. Like
Right,
it's a minimal way, but that doesn't mean it's less beautiful. If anything, it evokes more beauty
right.
because of the simplicity.
Hmm.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
life is like that. Like that things can be extremely elementary, very, very simple.
Hmm.
Um, and almost because of it, it becomes beautiful. Like if you have a very simple pattern, for example, um, whether it be in music or in art, and you repeat it and you have variations
Right,
to it, can create like an absolute masterpiece that looks extremely complex. But if you bring it down to its basis, it's like it's actually very simple beauty. But it,
right,
yeah, I wonder what that reflects. Because I think it reflects something. It's something I'd have to think
right.
about. Yeah. It's that I think human beings in general, I think we are similar in a sense
Mm.
that it's a balance between simplicity and complexity and like a unity to us, like that we're all the same in one sense. but we're
Hmm.
also radically different. And I think really good
Right.
music finds a way to balance that of
Hmm.
finding like you're talking about the musicians and uh what we're supposed to do, and like a kid in Japan isn't gonna go pick up a this or that.
Yeah.
So that's all this variation and this complexity,
Hmm. Right.
but it comes down to a very simple source. It's the same idea. Like music manifests in different instruments, different voices, but there's universal patterns that are like recognized everywhere, which is why I can connect to that Japanese music of an instrument that may have never heard before, but
Right.
still it strikes a chord, uh,
Hmm.
because I think you recognize something in there, like something very real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's well known that music is very universal
Mhm.
in the way that it connects to people. Relatively, I'd say universal because, well, not every style of music will resonate.
No, and then
Yeah,
that's true.
but for the most part, like the universality of it
Yeah.
is that you can hear it and internalize it without having to study it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Although that, even that, I can hear like people arguing against that because they're very complex forms of music or very culturally niche forms of music, say in India or in in Africa that are,
Mhm.
or in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, that are just on a completely different temperament tuning and just sound very odd. And if you don't, and if you're not like from the region or not exposed to that at all, it won't be something you can understand or truly internalize. But for the most part,
Yeah, no, I
music,
know what you mean.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's like
music
it's
is
the same with
very,
taste, right? Like there's acquired taste
yeah,
out there. Uh,
yeah,
and like classical music famously is something that a lot of people have to learn to listen to. But
that's true.
the beauty
Yeah,
is there regardless. Like a lot of people are like, I know that it's beautiful, I'm just not hearing it. Or like
hmm
jazz is a good example.
exactly.
I think it's
Yeah,
just
it
the
is.
wilder a genre gets, or the wilder the music gets, uh, a bit like
Yeah,
the less universal it gets, but it's still
yeah,
there. I think it's just tuning your ears to it.
yeah, yeah. See, I would think, Hans Zimmer's Time,
Yeah,
uh, his like it's extremely famous piece. Basically, all Westerners that you ask, like, do you like this piece? Time, do you like it? They'll be like, yes, it's amazing, right? But you go to into the depths of India in a village, remote village, or
yeah,
in Ethiopia or or South America, and you ask certain people, do you like this piece? And they're like, I don't get it. They
ah,
might say that because they're just not used to it.
yeah,
So there is a universality to music where it can connect and combine different influences and bring people together. But at
yeah,
the same time, I can't ignore that music is a language itself, and we're using a Western tuning temperament, and the frequency, really all music is just organized sound molecules. If you ever heard that, like, and when you Westerners have organized the sound molecules into a scale. Um, And in between even the note pitches, there are micro,
yeah.
like, what do you call it? I'm trying to think of Jacob Collier right now because he uses it all the time.
Ah,
There's semitones and then there's microtones,
okay.
and so it's different cultures have used um music and sound and tuned it to a different temperament. And so it's like yeah, Western music is the most like advanced, I'd say. But yeah, it is interesting studying like the universality of music, but also how subjective it is and how contextual it can be.
Yeah,
But
I think that goes to a point, like the
yeah,
subjectivity of it. But I think that
yeah, 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 I know.
underlying that there is such a reality to its
Hmm.
I don't know, objectivity. I think the subject object way of speaking about
Hmm.
music is difficult because I feel like
Right.
music transcends it in many ways. Uh,
Right. I
like
know
of
it
course
does.
it's beyond ourselves, like beyond one person, but it's
Hmm.
also not exactly objective as you
Right.
showcase.
Yeah.
It operates somewhere in the middle. Like
Right. Yeah. It
it's through it.
does.
Yeah, there's this cognitive scientist I listen to. He started this term called transjectivity to talk about
Hmm.
things that clearly transcend um, object or subject.
Hmm.
That paradigm, let's say, it's a way to talk about things that it almost seems useless to to call them
Hmm.
subjective or objective because
Right.
that implies that there is a line between the two. Whereas
Hmm.
sometimes reality works such that um, we are we are both. Like, if God creates all of us, for example,
Hmm.
we are all part of God. So then we are we are all one. But there is a difference to us that
Right.
is somewhat subjective, but it's actually not untethered from that.
Hmm.
And so I think I think music reflects that in some way uh,
Hmm.
because there is a universal aspect. And even if you don't understand, like even if right
Hmm.
now I really don't like, I don't know, some sort of Russian some sort of
Yeah.
Russian music, I think that's the type that I won't like, I can still grow to like it. And of course that depends on the
Hmm.
person, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I think you can open yourself up to different sounds, same way you can open
Absolutely.
yourself
Yeah.
up to different tastes or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
whatever it may be. I think
Hmm.
that's a beautiful idea. But I love this
Yeah.
this frame you use of like vibrations. Because sometimes I think about people that don't have the ability to listen, for example,
Hmm.
and I wonder how they experience music, if at all. Like uh, when they see people dancing, do they feel rhythm? Do they feel beat? Um, in some
Mm.
sense, I
Yeah.
think they must. That there must. I think for me, music is so foundational, so elemental that I think there must be an experience of that, even when there's no hearing involved. What do you think about that?
Right. I feel like if I was a neurologist, I'd be able to answer you better.
Well, I don't
But
know. I don't know if you would,
yeah,
because the neurologist
yeah,
would like look at,
right. Yeah,
brain
so
activity.
what
But
I'm trying, yeah, you're right, you're right. Yeah. What I'm trying to think about is obviously if a deaf person walked into a room with loud music, they can't, their ears aren't receiving the message
yeah,
of from the audio waves, and they're not, perceiving sound, you know.
yeah,
But the rest of their mind, the rest of their body
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And if we're really like going back to the worldview of how I see things, how I see humanity, it's like if music points us to, if music can shape and outline the things we go through in life,
yeah,
the suffering we go through, the anger we feel, the despair we feel, the joy we feel.
mm,
Um, and if that transcends like even us, our bodies,
yeah,
then I think a deaf person can absorb the frequencies of music and
yeah,
have their body respond in a way where the deaf person doesn't even fully understand because they can't perceive the audio themselves, but their body can.
yes,
So I do,
yes,
I'm not a neurologist, so I can't get into specifics of how the brain receives that information, but yeah, and it does go back to the point of like music is transcendent, and
yeah,
it does from my perspective point us to a greater life form, a,
yeah,
a creator really,
yeah,
because yeah, and again I can't divorce the two because whenever I sit down and create and say I finish a piece and post it somewhere, nobody anywhere is gonna say this just came out of nothing. This just formed and developed.
yeah,
All the laws of like creation and formation, um, yes, there is like a concept of my I don't know the term. I think microevolution where things can adapt and evolve and And we see that with different nationalities and how our bodies adapt to each environment, like ethnicities, and then ethnicities form over time. We see that, but all the laws of nature point to something having a creator.
Mm.
And so if you pull it all the way back to the beginning, to the most complex, forms of molecules and atoms and structures of biology, it's so deeply complex and beautiful. It's like my music is just a reflection of that concept of creation,
Ah,
where I can create something and take a piano and make my own um, piano piece about whatever I'm feeling or going through in life. And that is inherently a reflection of conceptually of what God has done with the
yeah,
earth, with humanity. And um, it's a very personal thing because I know um, in in the Old Testament in Genesis, when God creates humanity, it's something more personal than the flowers or the birds or the fish, etc. It was made in his image. And if we create stuff that is true and honest to our human experience, it sort of is like a little living thing,
yeah,
part of our soul that we pour into. And of course, we can create things that are not a part of our soul and that are just purely practical or utilitarian. Like we can make a wrench, or we can make a knife, or we can make a house. Um, but art has this unique place in humanity where it's more abstract. It's more like transcendent and spiritual,
yeah,
to where we can pour our experience, our story into organized sound molecules
yes,
and and it can evoke such powerful emotions from us that really nothing else can in the same way. And it does reflect the creator. That
yeah.
my life and the way that I approach art, it does inherently reflect it. And so,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm definitely growing in how I communicate that in my music itself.
Mm.
I have a lot of ideas, and I feel like my output can't even keep up with the amount of ideas I have.
Yeah,
Like how much, but yeah, there's a lot of things in store for the future. Um,
that's
yeah.
super. Man,
Yeah.
there's a lot there that I want to think about. The Well, in general, if we are made in God's image and He's a creator, then it makes sense that we create. And then
Right.
music specifically is something that, like, if you look at it materially speaking, it doesn't have
Right.
a function. Um, like if you just look
Yeah.
at it, like, does it give you food? Like, does it help you reproduce?
Hmm.
Does it add to your survival? But it's something beyond that. It's like once your base needs are met, there is a deeper longing, like that of the soul,
Absolutely.
of the spirit, and that's what music and art is for. And I think it's a good proxy for like the development of a society if it pays attention to that, because
Hmm.
the soul, like meaning, something Jesus said, I think it's like you cannot live off of bread. You cannot live off of bread alone, or something like that. And I
Hmm.
think it points to this idea that meaning precedes everything. Like
Hmm.
even just drinking water, if there's no meaning there, then it what is it even for? And I
Right.
think, like, yeah, music, art,
It
these,
points,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
it points to that meaning. Is that
Yeah, I
like,
think so,
yeah.
because I think that's our way of expressing it. And I
Hmm.
mean, ritual, religious ceremonies, they're imbued with music. Like music is so
Hmm.
foundational to that, because I think it replays the harmony that we descend from. Like
Hmm.
we spoke about this last week of how the Christian story is like a was it like a Shakespearean comedy or something? It's
Right, right.
like it begins in a perfect state. It
Hmm.
gets thrown into chaos and it returns to a perfect state. And I
Right.
think music it grasps at this state of perfection or harmony. I think harmony is a good word. Of like
Hmm.
patterns interacting in such a manner that they flow.
Hmm.
And that's what a good song does. A very deep
Right.
song is like it's like reality. It's like nature.
Yeah.
It's like it's yeah, there's a ratio to it that just
Yeah.
it pops. It's not perfect, but it's harmonious. That's what it
Hmm.
is, I think.
Right, yeah. That is, yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I think when you say harmony, I feel like I couldn't help but mention um sort of cadence in the way that harmony moves and the
Mm.
tensions and resolves. And that's more of a musician's like in-depth discussion, I guess. Um,
But tell me, it's interesting.
but when people haven't followed the so-called universal ebb and flow of harmony and the
Mm.
tension and resolve and just completely redefine it, like and add so much dissonance that it's mostly just tension and tension, and then it starts in tension, in the middle there's tension, the end there's tension. I think of Arnold Schoenberg. I don't know if you know who he is,
No.
but he was a composer who completely did away with the normal harmony um harmonic rules of composition and created a new form of music theory where essentially the result was completely atonal.
Mm.
And yeah, I still to this day am struggling with, what's universally beautiful and what is subjectively beautiful to people. And I think
Yeah.
that's a conversation that anyone can add to because we all have unique experiences.
Yeah.
But in the case of this very weird atonal music, and if you heard it, you would know what I mean. Like it doesn't have chords. It doesn't really have many structures that you're used to hearing. It's very sparse and oftentimes very chaotic and hard to
Mm.
listen to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is that's a conversation that I've and a dialogue I've had with myself for years. Still trying to figure it out. I don't
But
think I'll ever land on a
but tell me, I'm
conclusion.
trying to understand like this new way of looking at harmony. You say that's
Mhm.
like atonal. I mean,
Right.
what does it mean to you? What is that? Like what does that represent? Is it to you you find that it's there's no harmony there, or do you find that there is harmony there, but you're surprised that there is there, or what is
So a utilitarian, like in a literal sense, there is like technically only dissonance in it.
I see.
But I do see use in it though, when you add a lot of dissonance. And I've heard pieces that are very, very dissonant, but also have a sense of harmony in a way that it ebbs and flows. With the completely atonal music, it's so chaotic, it's so like formless in a
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
that it just kind of gets lost and it's very strange and alien to me. But
Mm.
um yeah, I do see a lot of use in atonality and incorporating it into film scores and especially like horror music. If you
Ah,
ever
yeah.
listen, there's a
Yeah.
lot of atonality in horror music, just
Yeah.
like um but yeah, what I try to do, if you want to know me as an artist, um I just try to absorb different styles, different perspectives, and uh, throughout music history, and I'm still doing that, and I'll be doing that probably till the day I die. Um, because music is still evolving now, and there's a long history of its evolution. So
Yeah.
I wanna learn about it, but I just try to absorb it and um maybe incorporate it, whether it be literal from a literal sense, like incorporate different sounds, different cadences or rhythms in my music, or in an abstract sense, take them what it means to me and try to evoke that in my music in some sort of way. Um, but yeah, I a lot of my musical journey has been um trying to break away from the comfortable
Yeah.
and what I'm just used to and try to explore, even though like most of the stuff on my channel is very like tonal minimalism,
Mhm.
ambient music. And that's what I love doing. That's probably one of my favorite things to do as a genre. But really, I now I have such a desire to expand, and I hope I don't expand too much.
Yeah.
So I don't come across as someone who has no idea what they want. But 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 yeah, I honestly ethnomusicology has been like a study. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
what that is,
It makes
but
sense like
yeah,
etymologically. So you're looking at the
right.
ethnos as meaning people and then music
Yeah.
and then knowledge
So
of that.
mu the
So
study of music across time,
I see.
across all cultures. It's a very broad
That's a
study.
fun idea though.
Yeah. Um, that's so interesting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I studied Egyptology and I
Okay.
long to be able to hear because there's so many mentions to the songs there.
Hmm.
Like they used a lot of harps and string
Okay.
instruments. This
Right.
is something, or like the Greeks, they have references to their music, and I just love to be able to hear those. Like I'm so curious
Right.
to what degree they're different. I'm interested to what degree environment shapes music as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if the sounds from the ancient Egyptians were similar to the ones that are there now, in terms of,
Hmm.
the materials that are there, what instruments
Right.
form from based on the materials, and then what
Yeah.
sounds are there. Uh, I think the environment plays a part there. So,
Hmm.
but that it keeps me up at night. That's why I studied it, because I was like, I want to turn that
That is,
stone.
yeah, that's really interesting. There's a certain scale that was very common in the Middle East, in the
Mm,
harmonic minor scale, or modally, you would call it like Phrygian.
yeah,
Um, it's very like common in Middle Eastern music in those that area region of the world. It's very ancient. I am very curious too. How did that form? Why? What like because they use minor music, and I think I mentioned this in our conversation before. They use minor music
yeah,
in a minor scale to
yeah,
express joy, even.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And klezmer music when they're celebrating, because I have a Jewish background,
Hmm.
we would use minor music to dance in a
Yeah.
circle. And it's just, yeah, going back to the discussion of different perspectives and on the language of music and expanding that is a huge part of like what I want to do and what I hopefully am doing right now. But it, yeah, it's really important to and it increases empathy, I think,
Mm,
in oneself, to where
yeah.
you can look at something so alien from your culture and seek to understand it. And that because music is so deeply intertwined with culture and
Mm,
through people's expression of suffering and love and loss and joy, um, it's a window into understanding other people that are
yeah.
different. And it sort of rewires your brain and how you approach people, not seeking to approach people who are comfortable in your eyes, but seeking to approach them on their grounds and understand them through their shoes, as a lot of people would say. But yeah,
That's a beautiful idea. I feel like I've been doing that with language. Like that's been my,
right.
I think that's what I've been given instead of music, let's say.
Mm,
Of For me, that's a big part of it, that I am motivated to learn languages so that I can meet people uh, in their on their
yeah.
terms and on their ground. And I think music works similarly. It's like you're
Mhm.
learning. their patterns. And that's
Hmm.
I love that idea that it can increase empathy because it's kind of radical. If you look at the history of time, I mean,
Hmm.
famously ancient Egypt was like their idea of the world was like Egypt and then the rest. It's like a stranger's life is not as worth as much as the Egyptian's life, for example. Before
Hmm.
that, it was like only the king really had a soul and had value and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
and so this idea is radical that people from all different cultures um, should have human rights, for example. That's already a radical idea. But to like
Hmm.
really understand them, I think it's a beautiful aim. And to do that through music is beautiful because music is
Yeah.
what people really care about. Like I don't know anyone that lives without it or could.
Hmm.
So that's a beautiful place to meet them.
Right. Yeah. I think what you said about language, and we talked in our last conversation, like 5 languages, right? Like roughly five
Yeah, like
languages.
yeah,
Yeah. That, like, what that does to your brain and how you approach life
yeah.
is very significant, I think, because when you approach art, film, music in this, in the whole vein, umbrella of art, I guess, you you have the mental tools to like try anything almost
Yeah.
and to not just judge it at first sight. And because yeah, you've been exposed to so many different walks of life,
Mm,
culture.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I hope America can grow from that concept. And I know, like, in a way, like we are a huge melting pot, but um something was lost even in our music. And I think our music is reflecting the state of our culture and our
Yes.
society, that we are sort of losing the uniqueness, the authenticity of what makes culture so beautiful and what makes human expression so beautiful.
Mm,
And I wouldn't say everything on the charts is bad, like or on the American charts is bad. There are a lot of great artists out there that are very popular, like
mm,
incredible artists even. Um, but yeah, where cinematic music is involved though, I feel there is like a generic space of cinematic music where it can get kind of repetitive. I'm like, okay, I've heard this type of thing
yeah.
before, or like, um, yeah, and I think I've made a couple. I've definitely had my fair share of making things that weren't that authentic to me, and just
Mm,
kind of like the generic cinematic style. But um, cinematic music, though, it inspires, and film music in particular, it inspires searching and reaching for something for a sound that hasn't quite been made yet.
yeah.
And that that um endeavor, that sort of visionary mindset of looking for something is so deeply inherent to creative film scoring,
Mm,
that it just excites me. It
yeah.
excites the heck out of me. Like, and I see different composers do that, not just with analog music or sound design electronically, but they do it through uh, a combination of indigenous instruments across all cultures, and or the orchestra, and they experiment with the orchestra and push the boundaries of what the orchestra can do. And that, yeah, I think that's one of the, musically speaking, that's one of the huge reasons why I just love the space that I'm trying to pursue
Yeah.
music in,
Yeah.
because it's so broad and so evocative. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of
You're a
went on a
pioneer.
rant,
No,
but
no, but it's beautiful.
yeah,
You're like
yeah.
an explorer, and
I hope so. Yeah.
you'd like there's an actual there are sounds that have never been heard before
Hmm.
that you can discover for yourself
Hmm.
and then share. And it can
Right.
it can evoke things in people that they've never felt before. Like that's super exciting. Like
right?
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a great thing to aim for. Right now I'm using a lot of sample libraries. One day, do you know what sample libraries are?
Is it like a place where you can get samples? Like there's an
Um,
archive of
well, kind of. It's sort of like a package of samples you get.
okay,
And I have a lot of string sample libraries.
I see.
With the string orchestra, um, you have these samples of these performers playing each note, and you can play it on the keyboard. I have a lot of those, and it's really great to combine those sounds, and you can often, that's what I'm doing a lot of now, combining a lot of different sounds to make a new sound.
Mm.
Um, but occasionally I'll take something like an object in my room and blow on it or hit it or make
Yeah,
a sound. And that's uniquely mine. And I hope that one day I can have enough tools to create something big with just raw, original like sounds.
yeah,
But that's something I'm aiming for and something that takes discipline. So yeah, that's where I'm wanting to grow and just become more honest to like what I want to sound like.
yeah,
And I use my voice a lot too,
yeah,
like in Jacob and the Stone. The moment the Jacob and the Stone cover, the moment you click on it, it's my voice. And that's my voice is like one of the biggest assets I have, honestly,
yeah.
because it's unique to me.
Mm.
Nobody else has it,
Yeah,
and I can do whatever I want with my voice, however far my voice can go. I mean, I can't sound like Michael Jackson,
yeah, yeah,
but I can't sing super duper well like that, you know. But yeah, I think if there are any musicians, composers watching, um, try using your voice, even if you don't like it, and just use objects in your room. And I'm sort of saying this to anyone watching, but also to me because I need the reminder too.
yeah,
Because you get so comfortable sitting at your desk with these really high quality sound libraries from London, recorded in Berlin or whatever, these excellent musicians or sounds that have been sculpted. But it's important to also add your own things too,
yeah,
because no one else has those things and only you do. And trust me, like from my experience in consuming art and like experiencing it, it's been such a joy to hear the original sounds of Hans Zimmer, the original sounds of um whatever musician you want to put in there, like, and it just it really does breathe life into the music you're writing. So yeah.
yeah. You're giving it like its own soul. It's like
Right. Yeah.
uh, man, I'm getting short on time. It's been
Yeah.
so good talking to you though. Like I'm really happy with the insights you've provided and the way we've been able to exchange today. And
Yeah.
more than that, I'm super excited to see where your music is gonna take you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and adding to the conversation and just allowing me to go on rants and
Of course.
explain myself. But yeah, I really appreciate it. This is like my first interview
Yeah,
ever, so I'm glad it could be here. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm really excited to see where your channel goes and um all the things you can learn from just sitting down with people and talking to
Yeah.
them.
If I get to do
Yeah.
that and I get to continue to do that, then I'm extremely happy and grateful. Um,
Yeah.
so thanks for your time, Elijah. And
Yeah.
for those listening, you can find his work below. I'll link your YouTube channel, your SoundCloud, everything that I can
Sounds
find.
good.
And do give him a listen. He's already an awesome artist and can only improve from here. So thank you, Elijah.
Yeah.
Have
Thank
a good
you.
day.
I'll see
Thank
ya.
you.